Okay, good deal. All right. So I think I see a new name. Um, and maybe there's two new names or three new people. If you're new to the classes, if you could kind of just unmute or raise your hand while we're looking at you here or whatever. And just tell us how you found out about the classes. You don't have to do this, but if you would, we kind of like to know. Just kind of unmute.
Can you see me?
Oh, Janet, go ahead.
Okay, I don't see myself up here in one of these little squares.
Okay.
I joined because I'm a plant-based person, but facing some new health issues, and I think I could fine-tune the plant-based journey and make progress on feeling better. I connected up with Scott. I've known him for some time, back before COVID. He did the classes, and I went to some of those through a mutual friend. So I'm happy to be here.
Well, Janet, welcome. This is the place to tune your skills. And we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. And Scott's happy to have you here.
Yeah.
Who else is kind of first, second time to the classes and how you found out about them? Anybody else dare to unmute and say hello? Maybe everybody's been here before and I just don't recognize you. So anyway, welcome back. Maybe you changed your name because it was one way or another. For Janet, we do have, if you have any kind of questions, we have a med student who is willing to, does kind of free counseling, gives you spend a little time talking and the med student learns and you get the advice. And if she has questions, it'll soon be she or he, hopefully. We have another couple med students who may be coming on board to do some one-on-one counseling for those who might need some extra help. So just wanted to remind everybody of that. Totally free. I see people are still logging on, but does anybody have any questions that you want answered or addressed tonight before we start with our movies and videos?
If anyone missed last week, the cancer class part 1 is up on the class website. So if that was the kind of the background of how cancer works and some in-depth look at that. And we talked a little bit about cancer screening a little bit as well. And then tonight, Charlie's going to be showing a lot of videos about what foods fight cancer.
And we're also going to spend some time on chemotherapy and the effectiveness of that related to cancer. As I was going through some of the videos, I just have 13 minutes I need to spend of your time to listen to this. It was, it kind of reminded me of the importance of taking into consideration how are you going to prevent cancer from forming? How are you going to keep it from propagating? And how much are you really going to depend on drugs and radiation to heal yourself should you develop a cancer? You may give some more thought after you see the videos tonight as to the lifestyle choices that you make and how important they are in really helping you attain health. And with that said, we're going to start with the first video, and I hope it brings you some inspiration to not only continue on what you're doing, but perhaps to do it even more and to encourage others. So with that said, I'm gonna share my screen with you and we're gonna play the first video, and I'll keep my fingers crossed that this goes well. This is about a cancer patient. He was given 6 months to live back in 2012. We've been playing it for a few years. It's always inspiring to me. I hope it is to you.
Hope goes a long way to somebody who has none. I've seen it. Hope. That's what this lifestyle does. It gives you hope. You're stronger than you've ever been in years. That's hope. And who doesn't want to continue doing what makes them feel amazing after they thought they were over the hill? That's what this lifestyle does. Hope. Neurofibromatosis is the disease I was born with. Most people hear it referred to as NF1 or NF2. And what NF does is it causes tumors to spontaneously form along your peripheral nerves, anywhere in your body without notice. My doctor basically told me that I'd be blind by 18. This would probably lead to cancer. Don't look for too much in life. NF people develop slower than other people. They kind of set me up to don't expect too much from my life. After she died, you know, my life took, man, a downward spiral that most don't come back from. I dropped out of school. I joined the street gang. I started selling drugs. I did everything you're not supposed to do. So how I would deal with my mother's death is I would get a pile of drugs and get obliterated just to numb the pain, to get through those few days. But I'm in a better place, and it's because of this lifestyle. So for 35 years, I've watched the NF community battle our disease. And there's no success. There's no thrivers. We have survivors, but surviving to me, you can be plugged into a machine on life support. You survived. Thriving means that you got sick and you came out the other side better than you did when you went in. That's what I wanted. And if I couldn't have that, I didn't even want to subject myself to what everybody else did. So what I did is told myself, when it's your turn to fight cancer, you're not going to do anything that everybody else did because you have nothing to lose. So when I got diagnosed, they basically said, you're done. Nobody in history has, lived with this type of diagnosis. And you should probably get your affairs in order, because 6 months is what you're looking at. And that broke me for about 3 minutes. To sum it up, I had to give up everything I loved, meat, dairy, yeast, and sugar, and had to learn how to love things that taste like dirt for the first 4 weeks of one's transition. I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you that if you decide to do this, it's not gonna be turbulent in the beginning. It's probably the most difficult decision I have ever made in my life, going from a 10,000 calorie diet to maybe a 4,500 calorie diet that is all plants, seeds, beans, and cruciferous vegetables. You never could have told Meathead that he would be reduced to eating boiled nuts for the rest of his life. So that's about an 18-inch bicep that has no meat in it, has no dairy in it, has no sugar in it, and there's no bread in it. All that this is pine nuts. All the plant-based lifestyle does is detox the 20, 30, 40 years of reckless lifestyle behavior and return you to a younger state. The only reason I'm here today is because of my new mindset. What does that mean? That means that I've removed all negative people, places, and things from my space. My fitness, which is training to live, which is a mindset as well. Where I get up every morning, even if I don't feel like training, and I never feel like training because I'm in pain 24 hours a day. But I don't have an option to not train because all we know is 6 years ago, this was my care plan, and I'm here almost 7 years later. And then you have the nutrition component. And that's one of the most important components. And that's what these plants and these phytonutrients do in your blood to fight free radicals and keep the cancer at bay, keep it happy. Without those three things firing at the same time, I do not exist and I would not be here, and I can't reiterate that enough. Fitness, nutrition, positive mindset over everything. Fitness, nutrition, and positive energy. This journey has showed me that man is not in control, okay? Because I was given 6 months to live in January 2012. I am in the best shape of my life. I turned 42 in a few months. And that's because everything is possible. Everything is possible through the plant-based lifestyle. Everything is possible through positive energy. Everything is possible when you put out what you want to get back. I truly believe that with every fiber in my being, that if you put your mind to it and your heart and intention is righteous, it can happen for you. I've been all the way down before cancer. I come from absolutely nothing. And I stand before you in the best shape of my life, and this journey has took me around the world twice, saving lives. You're not gonna tell me about possibilities. I'm what it looks like. I've spoke in a jail and I've spoken in Congress. It doesn't matter. Everything is possible for everybody, and I'm the proof.
So I'm going to stop for a moment and tell you, whenever I see that video, it reminds me, never give up hope. Now, it doesn't mean that when someone's at the end of their life and they're ready for hospice, that's inappropriate. You have to take the individual circumstances into consideration. But the other thing that really motivates me to keep doing these classes is to see that when people make significant lifestyle changes, they can not only reverse diabetes, they can lose weight, they can reverse heart disease, arthritis, autoimmune disorders. Doesn't mean that every single person that I come into contact with will have that result. Not necessarily. But it would mean, in my mind, the vast majority, 7 to 8, I think were what the statistics I've been going on of people are going to benefit. And if you listen to Dr. Esselstyn, heart disease, our number one killer, is a paper tiger, and we don't need to have it. He believes it's more than 7 to 8. I think he thinks that it could be wiped out entirely if we made healthy choices. Scott, what's your take about that?
Yeah, I second that. People in the chat were asking when that video was made, and I wonder how he's doing today. Have you checked up on him to see how he's doing?
I haven't. This was, he was in 2012 and the video came out 2019 from the site Hope, Hope. I don't know if it's hope.com or where it's from. It's on YouTube. A person given 6 months to live, whatever it is. If you want the reference, be happy to share it with you. But it's one story. We have other stories of people. I have my cousin who made the decision to go ahead and not take chemotherapy for her breast cancer. And it's been, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years now, and she's doing fine. I bit my nails thinking about that. Shouldn't I have insisted that she do chemotherapy? And then I ran into the next two videos about my thoughts, how it's adjusted my thoughts a bit. I'm not saying that chemotherapy is inappropriate. Everyone needs to make a decision, but I really was not aware of how many people are helped or how many people might be harmed. And so I want to share with you what Dr. Greger has to say about the effectiveness of chemotherapy and how much does chemotherapy improve survival. It's 2 more videos. Some of you who are undergoing chemotherapy may not like me to show these, but I think you deserve it, because I think that even if you choose to do chemotherapy or radiation or whatever therapy your doctor recommends, choosing healthy food choices that we're talking about based upon the evidence is really something that has been shown to benefit a number of people without the side effects. And maybe you could do them in combination. You know, we're not telling you what to do. We're just sharing you some of these things with you, just like we're not encouraging you, like this man chose not to do chemotherapy. I don't know how it reversed other than his lifestyle changes. It's pretty inspiring. You don't have to believe it. We're just sharing because I've seen many people who have had benefit, and I think you at least deserve to see the other side, which has not been promoted. So let me carry on to the next couple videos, and then we'll see if anyone has any questions. So it's how effective is chemotherapy is the next one, and how much does chemotherapy improve survival? I'll play the second one, only half of it, because you'll get the idea from the first half, but I want to share this.
Chemotherapy is one of the most common treatments for cancer. How effective exactly is it for improving survival and quality of life? This video and the next will answer those questions. Over the next few decades, the number of new cancer cases will continue to skyrocket. Are we winning the war on cancer? Sadly, in general, no. This despite the introduction of hundreds of new anti-cancer drugs. The war on cancer has been likened to the war on terror. No matter how many drone strikes you do, it's nearly impossible to kill all the bad guys, and no matter how precise the bombing, one must always consider the collateral damage. The toxicity from cancer therapy can be debilitating, and not just health-wise. There's also the financial toxicity. Patented anti-cancer drugs are priced at up to nearly $1,000 a day. Even with health insurance, the average cost to patients for stage 4 breast cancer, for example, can run $190,000. Right? It's bad enough to be fighting for your life without bankrupting your family at the same time. A problem still common to this day. Who can forget the apocryphal story of Walter White, working 2 jobs with health insurance and still could not afford the cancer care? Now, not everyone is willing to start their own meth lab, but many are willing to go for broke. a large proportion of cancer patients reported their willingness to declare bankruptcy or sell their homes to pay for treatment. Aren't the high prices justified if new and innovative treatments offer significant benefits to patients? But you may be shocked to find out that many FDA-approved cancer drugs may lack clinical benefit. Well, then how did they become FDA approved? Most approvals of cancer drugs are based on flimsy or untested surrogate endpoints, and post-marketing studies rarely validate the efficacy and safety of these drugs on patient-centered endpoints. Let me explain what that means. New chemo drugs are increasingly approved just based on so-called surrogate endpoints, which means instead of looking at what we really care about, survival or quality of life, they approve drugs based on things like response rate, tumor shrinkage. But who cares if a tumor shrinks if it doesn't actually extend your quantity or quality of life? Right? It's kind of counterintuitive, but just seeing a tumor shrink on a CT scan or an MRI is not necessarily correlated with improvements in survival or symptoms. In fact, most studies that have actually followed people out found low correlations with survival. The most recent comprehensive analysis found 90% of studies of such validation trials found little correlation with overall survival. Of 36 new chemo drugs approved by the FDA based on these kind of surrogate endpoints, once they were actually put to the test in the real world, only 1 in 7 was actually shown to extend life, and half explicitly flopped, and the rest remain untested, revealing that most cancer drug approvals have not been shown to, or do not, improve clinically relevant endpoints. Exorbitant drug prices are bad enough for treatments that work, but charging vulnerable patients for drugs without evidence that they actually improve patient survival and quality of life is unconscionable. Why doesn't the FDA require proof that chemo drugs actually benefit patients before approving them? Drug companies say that requiring randomized controlled trials with meaningful measures would take too long. But the study time reduction using surrogate endpoints rather than overall survival is estimated at just 11 months. So instead of it taking 7.3 years to come to market on average, it would take 8.2 years. Yes, look, we want to get these drugs out as soon as possible, but only if they're actually gonna help people. Do cancer drugs improve survival or quality of life? You don't need to know, according to our broken regulatory system, and things aren't much better over in Europe. A systematic evaluation of chemo drug approvals showed that most entered the market without evidence of benefit on survival or quality of life, and even years later, there was still no conclusive evidence that these drugs offered any benefit, and when they did, the gains were often marginal. That's why you see editorials in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute referencing Hans Christian Andersen, the author of The Tale of the Emperor's New Clothes. The studies all converge on a singular conclusion. Only a minority of new cancer drugs approved by U.S. and European regulatory authorities in recent years deliver clinically meaningful benefits to patients. In fact, some cancer-related deaths may be hastened or even caused by the toxic effects of chemotherapy rather than the cancer itself. Based on a review of tens of thousands of cancer patients, in as many as 27% of cases, the cancer treatment itself caused or hastened death. OK, but it might be worth that risk if the potential benefit is large enough. And that's the subject of my next video. How much does chemotherapy improve survival?
Well, let's go to the next video and see how much it improves survival.
Though we often hear new cancer drugs described as game-changing breakthroughs, most afford much more modest benefits. In my last video, I quoted a recent editorial in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute suggesting that the majority of new cancer drugs don't deliver clinically meaningful benefits at all. At least when they're later proven to be ineffective, they're pulled from the market, right? No. Even when post-market studies show the new drugs to have no clinical meaningful benefit, compared to not just older drugs, but compared to nothing, Compared to a sugar pill, most chemo drugs retain FDA approval and remain on the market, even at the same ridiculous prices. In fact, the most expensive drug they looked at, the one costing $169,836 a year, did not improve overall survival at all, and actually worsened quality of life. $169,000 just to make you feel worse with no benefit. Why pay a penny for a treatment that doesn't actually help? And even when they do improve survival, what does that actually mean? Currently, the trend is for Big Pharma to design large trials that may detect statistically significant but often trivial differences in survival endpoints. For example, check out this famous trial. Adding this second drug, erlotinib, to gemcitabine for advanced pancreatic cancer significantly prolonged overall survival. Yeah, they suffered more side effects, but we're not just talking about tumor shrinkage. They lived significantly longer. The placebo group only lived 5.91 months, whereas the added drug group survived all the way to 6.24 months? Wait a second. They only lived a third of a month longer? That's just 10 days. Right? All the side effects and expense for an average of just 10 days? Right? That's why doctors shouldn't use this statistical jargon, significant improvement in survival, while informing patients about benefits of new treatment. When patients hear the word survival, they're not thinking about a week and a half. If you put all the new chemo drugs together approved over the last dozen years, the average overall survival benefit is 2.1 months. Now look, 2 months is 2 months. I don't want to downplay that, but time and again, surveys have indicated that patients expect much more. Incredibly, about 3/4 of patients with metastatic lung or colorectal cancer did not report understanding that their chemo was not at all likely to cure their cancer. I mean, that's the primary treatment, but the chemo's not curative. It's just eking out a few extra weeks or months. Why weren't the majority of patients told that? It's not that they were being over-optimistic, explained the researcher. They were under the mistaken belief that the treatment offered a chance of cure when it in fact didn't. That deprives patients of the opportunity to weigh the risks and benefits and make their own decisions about their own body. If you ask cancer patients, most want at least a half a year to stomach the side effects, which suggests that most cancer patients might not choose chemotherapy if they knew how little they'd actually benefit. But look, everyone's different. One patient they interviewed said living even 1 week longer would be worth it, whereas another said they wouldn't even want to do chemo for 2 extra years of life, as they wouldn't want anything to interfere with the quality of the time they had left. Either way, people deserve to know the truth. I find it telling that oncologists and cancer nurses themselves express less willingness to accept intensive chemotherapy given the associated toxicities. Most chemo drugs are cytotoxic, meaning they work by killing off cancer cells, but they also kill off some healthy cells as collateral damage, which is why they can damage our nerves, cause irreversible heart failure, slough off the linings of our gut, or damage your immune system. Drug companies frequently downplay the risks, though. For example, describing this breast cancer drug as having acceptable side effect profiles for most patients, or this pancreatic cancer drug is having a manageable and mostly reversible safety profile. These were studies published in top medical journals. Right? Naturally, readers would take these statements to be true. However, if you actually look at the data, the number of serious, even life-threatening side effects was double, or even 5 times higher on the new breast cancer drug. And the manageable and mostly reversible side effects evidently weren't referring to those who were killed by the drug. I like how they even included like a cheat sheet. Acceptable toxicity? Acceptable to whom? Right? Manageable? Serious events and deaths can never be considered manageable. And feasible? Who would sign up for a drug whose toxicity could only be described as feasible? Favorable? Compared to what? Tolerable? That's for the patient to decide. And any drug that kills people can hardly be considered safe. Still, patients may very well consider it worth the risk. For some cancers, we've made tremendous strides. Right? Testicular cancer, for example, there's greater than a 1 in 3 chance that chemotherapy could enable you to survive at least to the 5-year mark. Same with Hodgkin's disease, a relatively rare form of lymphoma. But even when researchers try to err on the side of overestimating the benefit, for most common cancers, colon, lung, breast, and prostate, the chances appear to be more like 1 or 2%.
So I don't want to leave you with the impression that just because chemotherapy drugs may not be providing you a huge amount of benefit, with the exception of maybe testicular cancer or Hodgkin's lymphoma, I want to leave you with an upbeat message of how to win the war on cancer. And there is a way, and it's through your lifestyle choices, and that's what the next video is about. So I'm going to play that next, and then we'll open up the questions before we get on to the veggies for cancer and have some fun with different kinds of things. I know this is kind of the serious segment of this all, and hang in there a little bit longer. We're going to see how to win the war on cancer.
Over the last several decades, medicine has waged a major war against cancer, concentrating on earlier diagnosis and improved therapy. The war is not being won. Nevertheless, medicine shows few signs of admitting that its strategy may be flawed. In this, it resembles a World War general who stated, "Casualties? Huge. Ground gained? Negligible. Conclusion? Press on." If you look at the contribution of cancer-killing chemo to 5-year survival in cancer patients, it's on the order of only about 2%. Now, there's some pediatric cancers we've gotten good at treating, and testicular cancer and Hodgkin's disease are exceptions. But if you look at our most common cancers, colon, lung, breast, prostate, the success rate is only about 1%, meaning like out of nearly 14,000 colon cancer patients, only 146 lived out 5 years thanks to the chemotherapy. So the chance of survival benefit is like 1 in 100, but doctors don't tell patients that. New chemotherapy drugs are promoted as major breakthroughs only to be later quietly rejected. The minimal impact on survival in the more common cancers conflicts with the perceptions of many patients who feel they're receiving a treatment that will significantly enhance their chances of cure. In view of the minimal impact of cytotoxic chemotherapy on 5-year survival and the lack of any major progress over the last 20 years, it follows that its main role is really in palliation. Right? It can shrink tumors down, relieving pain and pressure, but that doesn't tend to translate into living any longer. The failure of therapy, coupled with the realization that the overwhelming majority of cancer is related to environmental, particularly lifestyle factors, dictates that prevention should be our foremost aim. Cancer is largely a preventable disease, but it does require major lifestyle changes. Of the millions diagnosed with cancer every year, as many as 90 to 95% of cancers are caused by lifestyle factors, and only 5 to 10% caused by bad genes. We know this because of enormous differences in the incidence of different forms of cancer around the world, which then change when people move from one place to another. So, for example, breast cancer rates differ by an order of magnitude, with the lowest rates in parts of Africa and Asia, until they move and start eating and living like Americans, Argentinians, Europeans, or Australians. So there's a need for a major reappraisal of how the problem of cancer is approached. The key to winning the war on cancer is prevention, which not only works better, but has the great advantage that entails nothing worse than nicotine or jelly bean withdrawal symptoms. On the other hand, cancer treatment, even when successful, often exposes the patient to much suffering, both physical and psychological. Indeed, some cancer treatments are considered worse than the disease. Most importantly, though, a healthy lifestyle can nip it in the bud, whereas early diagnosis and treatment, by definition, doesn't change the cancer rate. It doesn't change the number of people getting cancer in the first place. In terms of cancer prevention and treatment with nutrition, the consumption of animal-based food components has been historically associated with increased cancer risk, while certain plant-based food components associated with decreasing risk. So it's not enough to just avoid the bad stuff, right? Eating is pretty much a zero-sum game. Everything we put in our mouth is a lost opportunity to put something even healthier in our mouths. So it's not just avoiding foods with cancer-promoting properties. We need to eat foods with active cancer-suppressing mechanisms. By holistic nutrition, we're talking about whole foods. Yes, these are some of the purported active ingredients of healthy things like turmeric, or green tea, or broccoli, but this is how we should get them, not from pills. Yes, ultimately cancer development may primarily be a nutrition-responsive disease, but we're not talking about nutritional supplements, but rather whole, intact food.
Okay, I'm going to stop for a moment. We've got more movies for you, but there's a lot of food for thought. And I hope that you get the concept here. If you get diagnosed with a cancer or you're undergoing treatment, I think after watching these videos, you may question your doctor. What is the benefit that I'm getting? What is, is this going to prolong my life? Is it going to be a month that I'm going to live longer? Is it going to be years? I think you have a right to ask your provider, what are the effects of the medicines, and not be kept in the dark, as so many of us have been. And frankly, I'm one of those people who did not have an understanding of the benefits of chemotherapy. I'm part of the medical establishment, and I'm like, hey, I think that's what we need to do, the best we have to offer. But I'm kind of altering my thought process that we have better to offer, and that's your lifestyle changes. You might still choose to use some chemotherapy or radiation or some of the other targeted therapies that are newer. But boy, I really would encourage you all to give some serious thought to yourself, to your family members, as to what may provide them the best chance of not developing cancer, or if they have it, not causing it to progress by making healthy food choices. Done with my soapbox. Time for someone else.
Can I make a comment, Charlie?
Of course, Scott.
Yeah. So while we're still on that serious topic, I thought it's a really good time to mention. So T. Colin Campbell, who is author of the China study, and he actually did not too long ago, a couple years ago, he did took a year's sabbatical and went and studied at the Oxford Medical or Library in the UK. And he wrote this book, The Future of Nutrition, which I'm holding up here, which I've read. And one of the things that he discovered when it comes to cancer, when he was looking in the history, he was like really, for this new book, he was really digging into the history of all of this. Like, why is it that, we focus so much on targeted therapies and chemo and radiation and all these different things when, where did that all come from? Where did that kind of paradigm of that kind of treatment come from? And actually, over 100 years ago, in the early 1900s, there was already the thought that it was related to diet and lifestyle, to primarily nutrition. But at that time, when they were seeing some of this evidence, that they were already kind of married to the idea that we need to do surgery, cut it out, start working on chemo and different types of therapy, kind of more of the isolated look at it, compartmentalizing the body and targeting the therapy to the tumors and things, and that was kind of they were already married to that mindset, that paradigm. But what was interesting was there was this really brilliant statistician that was looking at the cancer data. This is back in the early 1900s, like 1905 or 1910, somewhere around there, I seem to recall. And so he was this brilliant statistician, and he is one of the founding members of the American Cancer Society. So one of the founding members of the American Cancer Society was this brilliant statistician who looked at all the data, and he actually came to the American Cancer Society when they were forming, and he said, "Hey, looking at this data, it looks like cancer is really a systemic condition. It's really about nutrition and lifestyle. That's really where it's coming from." And because that's what the data showed him. But they were already so married to this new paradigm of surgery and all the different treatments that we still have that same mindset today. And he was kind of minimalized because he had he was mostly written out of the archives of being like one of the founders of the American Cancer Society, because he was a believer of the data he saw was that it was primarily nutrition related and lifestyle. But he was kind of marginalized because of didn't fit with the paradigm that they had at the time, and unfortunately 100 years later we still have that same paradigm. So just wanted to add that before we kind of get to the good uplifting news going forward.
Thanks for adding that, Scott.
Yeah. Little history is important, I think.
It is. So does anybody have any comments like, geez, that Greger, he's wrong? Or that's kind of surprising to me. I had no idea. Just kind of curious. You could raise your hand or you could unmute yourself. And yeah, go ahead, Marcia.
I think Dr. Greger is right on target. I think it is the whole food plant-based way to go. Exercise, get yourself, meditate, sleep well. I think it's the whole package helps keep you healthy. And I think Whole Foods is number one.
Well, you're in the right area. We're all in that together, or most of us are. We're just trying to convince some of the others who might not quite be there yet of the importance of this.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
very important.
Anybody else? Surprised? Upset? You don't have to believe it. Go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Ross. It's Lisa. Something that
Hey,
we talked
Lisa,
about
go ahead.
at our book club, especially in regards to cancer, I think people tend to view the nature component, our genetics, as something that we can't change and something that cancer can pass down through families, and there's nothing we can do about it. But the nurture part of it can affect our genetics, and what we eat can change what's expressed in our genes. And I think we're seeing more of that now too.
Well, that's a good point you brought up. And the gun analogy, the bullets kind of are like the genes. You can load the gun and be at risk, but if someone needs to pull the trigger, you need to turn the genes on if you have a genetic tendency toward it. And what turns those genes on are your lifestyle choices.
I talked about that in class last week about the over 500 genes that were influenced by the diet and lifestyle change with Dean Ornish's study on early stage prostate cancer.
Okay. If you have other questions, we'll take them toward the end. We're going to continue on because now we're going to the fun part. Let's take a look at some different choices that we have a little fun, make choices as you're being asked about them, and have fun with this to see what foods you could actually choose to bring you health and reduce your cancer risk or fight a cancer that you might have. So here's veggies versus cancer. It's the first one. And then we have another.
But anyway, back to beans. In terms of nutrient density, nutrients per calorie, are beans the most nutritious class of whole foods? Or is it fruit, nuts and seeds, vegetables, or whole grains? What should go on the base of a healthy eating pyramid? Beans, fruits, nuts, veggies, or grains? Definitely vegetables. But which are the healthiest ones? A major advance was made this year ranking vegetables. Graphs like this that I've shared over the years that compare the antioxidant power of foods were all based on very primitive methods, basically just measuring how much a food slows down an oxidation reaction between two chemicals in a machine. That was the best we had, but it required a leap of faith that what was happening in the test tube could be extrapolated to what might actually happen in living human tissue. This year, though, a landmark study was published pitting 34 common vegetables against 8 different types of human cancers: breast cancer, brain tumors, kidney cancer, lung cancer, childhood brain tumors, pancreatic cancer, prostate cancer, and stomach cancer. Let's look at breast cancer. I'll cover up the answers. What's being measured is tumor cell proliferation. Here's the control. You drip some water on a human breast tumor, and nothing happens. It's still powering away at 100% growth rate. And these 7 vegetables appear useless against breast cancer, no different than placebo. But these 6 cut the cancer growth rate in half, and these 5 at the end stop cancer growth completely, stop these tumor cells dead in their tracks. The take-home message number 1 from this new data is that we need to eat a variety of vegetables. Take a look. Radishes, for example, do nothing against pancreatic cancer. In fact, if anything, they may actually accelerate growth. But against stomach cancer, they completely eliminated tumor cell growth. On the other hand, orange bell peppers don't do much for stomach cancer, but can cut prostate cancer growth by more than 75%. So we need to eat a variety of vegetables because they each tend to target different cancers. If you're particularly concerned about a specific cancer, like if you have a strong family history of breast cancer, then you can narrow it down and really nail those 5 or 6 veggies every day that excel at targeting breast tissue. But otherwise, to fight against any kind of cancer, we've got to eat a portfolio of vegetables to cover all our bases.
Okay, that's just the first start. Here is the next one that goes into it more deeply.
That doesn't mean some veggies aren't better than others. Some of these vegetables target multiple cancers at the same time. So using this groundbreaking new data, let's play Which is Healthier? Imagine you're standing in line at one of those custom made-to-order salad places where you get to choose your lettuce, choose your toppings, and then choose your dressing. Let's assume you don't have a strong family history of any particular cancer, and so aren't trying to hone in on avoiding one tumor over any other. First, let's choose our lettuce. Boston, endive, radicchio, romaine, or spinach? Which is healthier? Out of the 5, spinach is number 1 against breast cancer. Remember, the farther down, the better it is at slowing down these cancer cells. Number 1 against brain tumors. Number 1 against kidney cancer. Number 1 against lung cancer and pediatric brain tumors. That's why we need to feed our kids spinach. Number 1 against pancreatic cancer, prostate cancer, and stomach cancer. Now, it's not number 1 overall. There are 16 vegetables more powerful at stopping stomach cancer growth than spinach, but out of those 5 salad greens, spinach wins out across the board against every cancer type tested. What if the salad place said they were out of spinach, though? Which comes in second out of the 4 left to choose from? For breast cancer, radicchio is number 2. Against brain tumors, radicchio. Kidney cancer, radicchio. Radicchio. Romaine, radicchio, radicchio, and radicchio. So overall, out of those choices for greens,
radicchio is second healthiest. Back to the menu. Next, we get to choose 4 toppings. Now, there's a long line of people behind you, all staring at us to make our choice. We don't have time to ponder and pick the 4 absolute best, but we can at least make a guess as to roughly where on the graph they are. Yes or no? According to this amazing new data, do carrots slow down cancer cell growth rates more than 50%? Yes or no? The answer is no, 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 and no. So, shredded carrots aren't going to make our top toppings choice. What about shredded beets? Yes or no? Yes. Super yes. Brain tumor, just beat it. Kidney cancer is a no, close to 50%, but not quite there. But then yes, 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 yes. So, overall, yes for beets. Are we putting cucumber on our salad? As tasty as they may be, no. For most cancers, it suppressed tumor cell growth less than 50%. What about tomatoes? No tomatoes either. What about a potato? You can actually choose potatoes for your salad. Yes or no? No potatoes either. Wait a second, no iceberg lettuce, carrots, cucumbers, tomatoes, potatoes, that's all people eat. That's the problem. Even people eating their vegetables aren't really eating their vegetables. The majority of veggies people commonly eat have little effect. Cutting to the chase. The line at the salad place is now out the door at this point. In this study, there was one clear winner, one vegetable that completely 100% stopped cancer growth in 7 out of the 8 tumor lines. One of the most important findings of the year. Which vegetable was it? Was it bok choy, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, fiddlehead ferns, garlic, kale, or red cabbage? Number 1 against breast cancer, garlic. Number 1 against brain tumors, garlic. Number 2 against kidney cancer, lung cancer, garlic. Childhood brain tumors, garlic. Pancreatic cancer, garlic. Prostate cancer, and stomach cancer, garlic. So might I suggest a garlicky salad dressing? But wait, is it just that garlic is toxic to all cells? Yes, it stops the growth of cancer cells, but maybe it stops the growth of healthy cells too. That wouldn't be good. They tested for that. The black bars are the cancer cells. The white bars are the normal cells. As you can see, garlic slams cancer cells, but doesn't touch normal cells. And the same thing with pretty much all the vegetables. They're selective. They go after the cancer cells, but leave the normal cells alone. Veggies are amazing. Now, if you didn't pick garlic and instead chose one of those others, you probably weren't far off. The 2 best families of vegetables for cancer prevention are the cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, kale, cabbage, and the allium family vegetables like garlic, onions, and leeks. Let me just run through this one last time to highlight this important concept. Starting from the beginning, cruciferous vegetables in green, allium family vegetables in yellow. So what I want you to notice is the clustering of colors over to the right side, which illustrates the power of these two superfood classes of vegetables, whether for breast cancer, brain cancer, kidney cancer, lung cancer, or brain cancer. Interestingly, you'll notice that bok choy is often the kind of odd one out, apparently the least healthy of the cruciferous vegetables. Pancreatic cancer, prostate cancer, and finally, stomach cancer. So, you know all those recipes that start with like garlic and onions and then you throw in some greens? That is the way to eat. The researchers conclude the inclusion of cruciferous and allium family vegetables in the diet is essential for effective dietary-based chemopreventive or cancer preventive strategies.
Now, if you've seen that before, you still might have remembered something. It's always interesting to me every time I see that video. If you've never seen it before, I hope you have the concept that those who are eating vegetables may not be eating their vegetables, particularly when it comes to cancer. And if you want to be the best cancer fighting, you'll be eating some allium and cruciferous on a daily basis. And if you've seen the breakfast we choose a fresh clove of garlic every day. We eat it raw, but you could chop it up, let it rest for, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes. It would develop the anti-cancer chemical because you wouldn't destroy the enzyme during that time. But once you cook it, you destroy the enzyme. And the same way goes with if you're adding broccoli, kale, or the other cruciferous vegetables. Could be cauliflower, or Swiss chard, collard greens. There's a lot of them. Arugula. I can't think of all of them right now. But any questions on this? Did this surprise you about you might be eating vegetables that are not as anti-cancer? Or did you learn about anti-cancer vegetables? I hope so. Any thoughts? Arun. And then Dave and Sherry next. Arun, you can unmute first.
Thank you. So the allium family vegetables are onion, garlic, leeks, and?
Those are the three. That's it.
Okay.
You
Thank
got
you.
it.
Okay.
Good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Dave, Shri.
So did you say if you cook the cruciferous vegetables, they lose their cancer ability?
So broccoli, if you cook it, you destroy the enzyme that provides you with sulforaphane, which is one of the anti-cancer components or elements, chemicals. So you can add just a sprig of fresh or raw broccoli to your plate, and you'll have the enzyme in that, and it'll work for the rest of the broccoli you're eating. If you don't want to eat anything that's raw, then you can just add a pinch of mustard powder. It comes in that yellow can, or it comes in a glass jar. It's called mustard powder. Just take a pinch of it and sprinkle it in your meal with the cooked broccoli, and you'll be fine.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for asking that question because I'm sure a lot of the other members in this class are not aware of that and may have a question when they start choosing to eat that this way. Nancy, you can unmute.
Would
Hey.
prepared mustard do the same thing?
What kind of mustard?
Prepared, the French's or the the stuff you buy in the store that you put on your bread.
I don't have the answer to that. If they cook that in any way or heat it up, they may destroy the enzyme when they're making mustard. I don't know how that mustard is actually made, whether it's heated up or whether it's just used as mustard powder and adds the color. Does anybody know? So if you want to use a little mustard, you could, but add another pinch of mustard powder. Cover your bases. That's what I do, unless you want to call a company up and ask them, how do you make this? Do you heat it up? Do you destroy the enzyme in there? And if you get someone who doesn't know, don't believe them. I'll run.
Mustard seeds we in Indian cooking, we use like a spoon of mustard seeds in a curry. Is that helpful?
I don't know. Dr. Greger recommends mustard powder. A pinch of mustard powder. So I'm sure the mustard powder probably comes from the crushed up seeds. At least that makes sense to me. I'm not
Right.
sure that's the fact. So if you do a quick Google search, how do you get mustard powder? If it's just crushing the seed, you want to make sure the seeds get crushed up.
Yeah.
It may be like flax seeds. If you just eat the whole flax seed, you don't get the omega-3. You have to grind it or crush it up to get the
Okay.
full benefit. So
Sounds good.
at
Okay.
least I'd grind up the mustard seeds.
Got it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. These are fun questions. I love them. Especially since I don't know the answer for sure. Yes, Joan.
So when you cut the broccoli, you have to let it rest before you eat it?
No, you have to let it rest before you ever cook it. You chop it up. And then when it gets chopped up, when the cells are broken, you have to let broccoli rest for 45 minutes, which is a long time. Garlic, you have to let rest for, 10 or 15 minutes, a much shorter time if you're going to throw it in the pan and cook it.
Is that true with cabbage?
I don't know. He doesn't mention cabbage. I don't think so, but I don't know for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the study that it was just done on broccoli, but I think theoretically, because all cruciferous vegetables create some sulforaphane, but they just did the study on broccoli and the mustard powder and all that. So but probably it's theoretically, consistent with throughout all the cruciferous vegetables, but we don't know for sure.
I'll second that. That's a good argument, Scott. I like it. So what this kind of encourages you to do is you may like everything cooked, but you may consider adding a little raw. Like some people say, do 50% raw and 50% cooked. Do what you want to do if you cannot eat raw at all. But if you can't, you might consider adding just a little bit raw that you chew. You get a little bit of extra chewing powder, a little more saliva in there with the bacteria that combine with the dark green leafies, which produce what? The nitric oxide, which relaxes your arteries, which Dr. Esselstyn says, very healthy, heal your arteries. Okay, Arun, and then we'll get to Charlotte.
About mustard greens, are they mustard greens?
Wonderful. I don't know if they have the enzyme. I would guess that they might, but I'm sure mustard greens are definitely healthy. Whether they substitute for the mustard powder, I don't have an absolute, but I'd say probably. But it's so easy to add a little pinch of mustard powder. I
Yes.
wouldn't want to discourage you from doing that.
Okay.
Or eating some fresh, whatever it is, broccoli, which is a healthy thing. Yes, Charlotte.
Thanks very much. So I was intrigued about the spinach. My understanding is if you had spinach every day, because I have a big giant salad every day of mixed greens. I can't remember if it's oxalic acid or there's an acid in there that we have too much of it. That's not a good thing. So can you speak to that, please?
Sure, oxalates are potentially an issue. They're in spinach, they're in chard, they're in
Beets,
beets.
Beet greens,
not whole beets, huh?
beet greens.
In the
Yeah.
beet greens.
Yeah.
And so you can have probably a handful a day. If you have a history of kidney stones with oxalate, calcium oxalate formation, I wouldn't eat 3 or 4 handfuls of those kinds of things, but to do a handful of spinach once a day is not going to harm you. You can have a bit of oxalate, just don't overdo it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have anything burning on your mind? Okay, so, Edward.
I was looking into this company called Well Your World. They make some pretty neat plant-based products. And something I saw was date powder as like an alternative to sugar. It's just like dehydrated, ground up date. But I was wondering if that was not all that much better than sugar.
I think it's better than, definitely better than white sugar. If it depends on how they make that powder. If they're stripping away some of the fiber, then it wouldn't be much better.
Right, that's what I was thinking. They
But-
claim to just grind it up as is.
If they grind it up as is and the fiber goes along with it, it's should be an acceptable alternative to what you're doing.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Debbie.
So, Edward, what are you wanting to use it for? I'm just curious because I made date paste this week for the first time and it was so easy. So I just wondered, are you wanting to use it for baking or what were you?
I didn't have a particular use in mind. Although something that's an idea I had was like oatmeal. I don't like unsweetened oatmeal like at all.
Mm-hmm.
And fruit doesn't really help that much.
Well,
But I thought this might.
all I did was cover dates with very boiling water and let them sit for 30 minutes and then throw them in the blender with that water. And voila, there's date paste that you could put a spoonful in your oatmeal and it's so easy. And I'm sure it's less expensive, I bet, than and probably more nutritious because it isn't as processed. So just FYI.
Okay, thank you.
I thought you were going to give it to Eureka. Okay, Arun.
My comments to add are, my wife, she prefers to add cayenne pepper, and I add to that a little bit of, nutritional yeast and ground flax seeds, and some nuts, and she loves it. We never put sugar or any sweetening in it, except maybe once in a while raisins.
It sounds great. My mouth's watering. I would eat something like that, actually.
Yeah, it sounds very savory, which is I think it's better.
Okay, so I have a few more videos, which we probably won't get to, but dairy and cancer, eggs and breast cancer, are microplastics a problem with cancer, and French fries. and cancer. If you haven't seen those videos, it would be good for you to do it. So I need to just mute. Let's see.
It shows a crucial intersection of Roman rule.
If I can, let's see, get back to the participants here. See if I can kind of just get muted stuff. There we go. Okay, we do what we can to kind of keep the room under control. So 1 or 2 more videos, and then we'll take another couple questions. Here we go. We're going to do the dairy and cancer and the eggs and breast cancer, because I think these are something that most of you might be interested in, particularly since you have relatives or friends who are doing these things. And here's the dairy and cancer. You can see I've got quite a number of these videos. Can you see this, or did I not
No,
share?
you haven't shared your screen. You haven't shared yet.
Okay. Gosh, I always forget to do that, don't I? All right, here we go. Here's the share. I was doing so well, and then I X myself out of this. And now I need to go back to my hard drive and find it. The med students have told me my laptop drives them nuts because I have so many of these icons on there, and why I cannot get this to open up. It's got to open up. There we go. It opened up. Let's go over to here, and we got to go down to 11. Got a few talks here, but we're getting there. Okay, come on up. And then we're coming to dairy and cancer. Here we go.
Studies comparing country-by-country cancer rates have shown up to a 70-fold variation in the incidence of prostate cancer worldwide, with low rates in parts of Asia and Africa, and high rates in North America, Australia, New Zealand, and Northern Europe. Here's the map of prostate cancer mortality. Could dairy consumption have something to do with it, given Northern Europeans, Americans, Australians drink a lot of milk, whereas most non-Caucasians in the world are lactose intolerant? But just because a country drinks a lot of milk and has a lot of cancer doesn't mean the individuals within that country that are drinking the milk are getting the cancer. That's why we need cohort studies, where you find out how much milk people drink and follow those individuals over time and see if those who drink more milk get more cancer. There have been dozens of such studies done. Put them all together, and intakes of total dairy products, including low-fat milk, were indeed associated with increased prostate cancer risk. The question is, why? Maybe it's just all the calcium? They found that the more calcium people consume, the higher their risk of prostate cancer. Yeah, but most people get their calcium from dairy, so how do we know this isn't just a dairy effect? Before we start worrying about kale and other non-dairy sources of calcium, it'd be nice to see dairy calcium teased out from non-dairy calcium intakes, and that's exactly what they did. Yes, the more calcium from dairy sources, the higher the risk of cancer, but non-dairy sources of calcium were found to be protective. So it wasn't a calcium effect, it was a dairy effect. This suggests that other components of dairy may be to blame. They suggest it's the animal protein boosting the levels of a cancer-promoting growth hormone called IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1. If you look at 28 studies involving nearly 28,000 people, this is what's called an albatross plot. Any study to the right of this line shows a link between IGF-1 levels and dairy product, milk specifically, or dairy protein consumption, and any study hitting this line or over shows a significant association with higher IGF-1 levels. This could also explain why plant-based diets can be so protective. Put watch and wait cancer patients on a whole food plant-based diet for a year, no chemo, no radiation, lifestyle changes only, and get a significant reduction in PSA levels, indicative of
tumor shrinkage, their bloodstream becoming nearly 8 times better at suppressing the growth of cancer cells. Do biopsies, and you can show changes in gene expression, a downregulation of critical cancer genes, effectively switching off cancer growth genes at a genetic level. Whereas if you instead eat lots of dairy after a prostate cancer diagnosis, you may suffer a 76% higher risk of death overall, and a 141% increased risk of dying specifically from your cancer. Even without IGF-1, the milk protein casein appears to be a cancer cell proliferation promoting factor, increasing the growth of prostate cancer cells, at least in a petri dish, and the same thing with whey, the other major animal protein in dairy. See, nearly 100% of advanced prostate cancers thrive by upregulating a growth enzyme called TOR, and dairy protein boosts TOR signaling even higher, which only makes sense, right? Calves have to grow like 40 times faster than human babies, and so cow's milk has to be packed with growth promoters, not to mention the hormones in milk, especially from cows who are already pregnant again. This commercialized milk production by pregnant cows releases uncontrolled amounts of bovine steroid hormones into the human food chain, and so the combination may well explain the observed association between high dairy consumption and increased risk of prostate cancer. From an evolutionary perspective, the persistent abuse of the growth-promoting signaling system of bovine milk by humans over their entire lifespan, not just drinking milk during infancy, maintains the most important hallmark of cancer biology, this sustained proliferative signaling to grow, grow, grow. And so there's this interest in trying to define the safe upper limits of long-term milk and dairy intake for the prevention of the most common dairy-promoted cancer in men. But if you look at diet and cancer guideline recommendations, yeah, milk may increase risk of prostate cancer. However, no recommendation was provided for cutting down on dairy because the evidence for prostate cancer conflicted with decreased risk of colorectal cancer. High dairy intake is associated with increased prostate cancer risk, but decreased colon cancer risk. So it's like, alcohol may be an intoxicating carcinogen, but policymakers hesitate to introduce, effective alcohol policies, or even to support the addition of cancer warning labels for fear they might undermine any possible health benefits of alcohol use. Now, I've talked about how the purported benefits of alcohol appear to be evaporating. Is dairy really protective against colon cancer? If you put all the cohort studies together, where they measured dairy consumption, then followed people for years to see who got cancer, milk and total dairy consumption was indeed associated with a reduction in colorectal cancer risk, one of our deadliest cancers. Now, people who drink more milk just happen to tend to exercise more, smoke less, drink less, eat less meat, which could explain some of the association. However, many of the studies adjusted for these kinds of confounding factors. More likely, it was the protective effects of the calcium, which may bind up pro-inflammatory bile acids in the gut, though high-fat dairy products like cheese may actually increase bile acids, explaining why the cheese appeared to cancel out the calcium benefit. So might we be able to get the best of both worlds by consuming non-dairy calcium sources? If you randomize people to calcium supplements, you can get a significant reduction in recurring colon polyps, which can otherwise turn into cancer, though calcium pills have been associated with adverse cardiovascular effects. And so the best of all worlds, if you want to take a precautionary approach in terms of nutrition in cancer, is to obtain calcium through low-oxalate, dark green, leafy vegetables, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, or, if necessary, calcium-fortified foods such as soy or almond milk.
Okay, I hope you got that. That calcium decreases your colon cancer risk, and that dairy increases the prostate cancer risk. So you don't really want to get your calcium from dairy. You want to get it from the greens, the beans, and maybe some non-dairy milks. So that's the lesson from that. And then let's go about eggs and breast cancer. It's another important one.
This nationwide study of dietary cholesterol intake in cancer concluded that not only may cutting down on cholesterol help prevent cardiovascular diseases, but also may reduce the risk of cancer. Therefore, limitation of animal fat and cholesterol is a favorable public health measure. But the study didn't find high cholesterol consumption correlated with all cancers. Yes, a significant association between high cholesterol intake was found for stomach cancer, colon cancer, rectal cancer, pancreatic cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, kidney cancer, bladder cancer, and a type of bone marrow cancer called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but the association was negative for prostate cancer. If you look at studies on prostate cancer and eggs, though, which are one of the primary sources of cholesterol in the diet, a pooled analysis of 15 prospective cohort studies found that those who ate 25 grams a day or more of eggs, which is like half an egg a day, versus like less than an egg a week, those averaging that half egg had a significant 14% increased risk of advanced and fatal prostate cancer. They weren't exactly sure how to explain it, but eggs contain considerable amounts of choline, which certain bad bacteria in the gut can turn into toxic TMAO, which I've described before. There also appears to be a dose response, meaning the more eggs, the more cancer risk. Increasing consumption by 5 eggs a week may increase the risk of fatal prostate cancer 47%, though that's just for fatal prostate cancer. No relationship was found between eggs and prostate cancer in general, just eggs in the deadly forms. It's not necessarily the cholesterol, though. Yes, a large amount of cholesterol may support the rapid proliferation and growth of cancer cells, but there's also the choline and the animal protein, all of which may link egg consumption to the risk of breast, ovarian, and prostate cancers. And then if you look at prostate cancer progression, meaning men who've already been treated for prostate cancer, had a radical prostatectomy to have their whole prostate removed, and are trying to keep the cancer from coming back, if you see what they were eating, a very high intake of eggs, by which they mean nearly an entire egg a day, was associated with the likelihood of recurrence of high-grade disease, meaning an aggressive form of cancer coming back. Egg consumption is also associated with increased risk of ovarian cancer, where women make their own eggs, something we've known for over 15 years now. Eggs can also be a source of heterocyclic amines, carcinogenic chemicals that are formed during high-temperature frying. That would be consistent with the bladder cancer data, suggesting fried egg consumption may double cancer risk, but not boiled eggs. The researchers considered the high cholesterol content of eggs, though, to be the most plausible explanation for the ovarian cancer link. Eating lots of cholesterol-rich foods may increase the formation of toxic bile acids, which may at least affect colorectal cancer and lung cancer. There does seem to be a dose-response relationship for egg consumption in cancers of the gut. Even just a few eggs a week may be associated with a 19% greater risk of colorectal cancer, but hit 3 or more eggs a week, and the increased risk may be as high as 71%. And finally, breast cancer. A significant increase in breast cancer risk once women get up to around 5 eggs a week. Now, this was putting together just all the forward-looking cohort studies. Adding together all the studies doesn't change the conclusion. Egg consumption is associated with increased breast cancer risk. A single serving of eggs may exceed the old 300 milligram daily limit by like 40%. The latest dietary guidelines actually strengthened their limits on dietary cholesterol, saying, forget 300, as recommended by the National Academy of Sciences Institute of Medicine. We should eat as little dietary cholesterol as possible.
So we haven't spent a lot of time talking about eggs in this class, but I hope these last couple videos clue you into thinking. Are the foods that we've been so used to eating and that are part of our standard American diet, the eggs, the dairy, the meats, are they really what we should be continuing to eat, or might we be making healthier choices?
And someone's asking about if you ate egg whites, wouldn't be getting the cholesterol, but you'd still be getting the IGF-1, the choline. So it still wouldn't be the best choice if you're looking at it from a cancer standpoint.
My personal story about egg whites is I didn't think I was getting enough protein when I first transitioned 11 years ago. And so I added it up every day, and here I was, still in the numbers game. And I called up, talked to Dr. Esselstyn's, his person who helped field the calls for him, and she hooked me up with him. He called me, and I said, Dr. Esselstyn, I'm not getting enough protein. He says, Charlie, how many people, so I have to eat egg whites, and I'm not eating the cholesterol in the egg, and I'm drinking skim milk. He says, why are you doing that? I said, for protein. He says, how many people have you diagnosed with protein deficiency in your 33 years at the time? I said, none. He says, yeah, it doesn't happen here unless someone is just starving, they're not getting enough calories, or they're eating one food. So stop counting. So on his advice, I stopped counting, and that was the end of my egg whites and skim milk. Worry about protein. Anybody else?
So I was asking about protein in the chat there. They thought eggs were clean and a good source of protein. It's like, well, you learn from these classes, you get all the protein you need just by eating enough calories from whole plant foods. So your protein champions are your beans and legumes, because they're about 25% of their calories are protein, and they contain a little bit more calories than, say, even though like spinach, for example, about 50% of the calories in spinach is protein, but because spinach is so low in calories, like about 70 calories per pound, you wouldn't get as many grams of protein eating a bunch of spinach as you would eating like a cup of beans, because the cup of beans are about 500 calories a pound. So by getting more calories per pound, you're essentially getting more protein, even though beans have half as much protein per calorie than spinach, but because the calories are so much higher. So yeah, as long as you're getting enough calories, you get enough protein. You can go back to the class back in February on the class archives on nutritional myths and other popular diets, where I talk about protein a lot there.
I'll run.
Thank you. Charlie, I have a question about yogurt. It's a fermented food, and especially if you have a non-sweetened yogurt, that might be even better. So my question is, the fermentation process, does that change anything in terms of health benefits of a dairy product called yogurt?
So in my mind, no, I still think of IGF-1 and promotion of cancer, even if it's fermented, but I don't have the absolute science as to the numbers and whether it would have less IGF-1 or more. And it has 0 fiber in it. It's a dairy product, only plants. If you are talking about a plant yogurt, if it has fiber in it, then I'm good with that. If you have to have processed food, it's probably okay. But an animal yogurt, no fiber. And my goal is to get as much fiber in the day as I can, because of the reduced risk in colon cancer, and the reduced risk in heart disease, and the reduced risk in breast cancer, and increased health. So Scott, what's your take on yogurt and fermentation?
Yeah, same exact thing. I would just say, if you really like yogurt and you want that fermentation, then go with a soy yogurt, almond milk yogurt, an oat milk yogurt. There's different plant milk yogurts you could do unsweetened, and then you're not getting that IGF-1, which is what we don't want. Only the animal products have the high amounts of the IGF-1, so insulin-like growth factor 1. So
thank you.
Excellent question, because I know a lot of people love their yogurt, and it may be a little taste bud change, but it's sort of like when you've gone from whole milk to skim milk. After a while, your taste buds change and you don't notice the difference. And then you go from skim milk to soy milk or almond milk or oat milk, And at first it's kind of funny. And then after a week or two, it's like, oh, okay, this is fine with me. It's white. And, it does the trick. So same thing with, your first attempts at plant-based yogurts may not give you quite the satisfaction that you have with those extra rich calories of the animal-based yogurt, but take that in consideration that you're trying to find foods that are actually going to bring you the best health.
Yeah, I tried to make soy yogurt. It didn't come out as good, so that's why I was asking.
We're just talking about health here, but we could talk about the horrible environmental impacts and ethical impacts of the dairy industry, and that's a whole another class that we could talk about, which we do have a class on environment and the foods we eat. So yeah.
So is there anyone else who has a comment, a thought? We hope that you picked up a few pointers from the videos tonight and the class discussion. It sure has been fun for me and probably Scott and whoever else participated. And yet we could spend another couple minutes if you have any questions.
And then next week we're doing open forum, so it's all questions and discussion. So hope you can come back next week too.
Well, I have one small question.
Okay, Arun, it's good. Go ahead.
This person here, Nevi, what is the background there? Nice scenic background there you have?
Which scenic background?
Somebody named Oregon.
Yevgeny, Oregon.
Yeah, right.
That was me. I was at the Old Town Florence.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's cool. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Lisa, do you have anything to report anymore?
The same old, same old. I got a couple requests for health coaching during the class. So if you're interested, you can get the Calendly link to schedule with me, or you can email with me. I think that's it.
Very good. And of course, Lisa started with Bonnie or Vonda, the Facebook page, and there's now over 426 members or something on there. Pretty amazing. And she also does a book club, doing Dr. Greger's book, How Not to Die. Probably worth to chime in. I think you're doing it once or twice a month.
Yes, once a month. So there's info on that on Scott's emails and the website too. One fun announcement is last night I registered for the Lifestyle Medicine Conference. So
oh yay, in
there.
Denver. I'll see you in Denver, Lisa.
Yes.
Hey, we'll have to sit together.
Yes, that'd be great.
Great.
Yay.
All right. All right. I don't see any other hands. I don't see any other questions. We don't want to keep you here all night. Thank you for coming. Wish you all a good week, and until the next time, keep learning, having fun.
Good night.
See you next week.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Scott.
Thank you.